This morning I have a title that's sort of an unusual title. It's called Birds. Any of you have a bird? Any of you have a bird? I see one, two, maybe. Used to have a little parakeet, and it was my parakeet. His name was Billy. And my brother, he didn't like my brother. As a matter of fact, I taught him that when he got on my brother's shoulder is to bite his ear. And I could whistle, Billy, and he'd fly from his cage and light on my finger. And he'd sit on my finger and he'd bend over and I could just rub his head and he'd just nudge and I'd rub his head and stuff. You know, we have birds for pets, but this morning I'm going to share with you about some birds that are not pets. Birds that are not really good. Birds that may... How many of you saw the Alfred Hitchcock movie Birds a long time ago? Probably more so. The picture on the front of our bulletin comes from that, I believe. And it's quite... I like that picture because it's going to help us to see and get a picture of really how the birds are toward us. Birds. You know, we're going to share about the parable of the sower and how the farmer sows the seed. It says some fell along the path, some fell on in rocky soil, some fell among thorns, and then some fell on good ground. And this morning, what I want to do is I want to just concentrate on the seed that fell along the path. The seed that fell along the path. And Mark, the 4th chapter, the first 4 verses in the Amplified, says, "Again, Jesus began to teach beside the lake, and a great crowd gathered about him, so that he got into the ship in order to sit in it on the sea. And the whole crowd was at the lakeside on the shore. And he taught them many things in parables, illustrations, or comparisons, put beside truths to explain them." They just explain to us in the Scripture what parables are. "And in his teachings he said to them, 'Give attention to this. Behold, a sower went out to sow. And as he was sowing, some seed fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up.'" Now what I want to do is I want to skip ahead to verse 13 through 15, that Jesus sort of explains this scripture to us. It says, "And he said unto them, Do not discern and understand this parable. How then is it possible for you to discern and understand all the parables?" He says, "The sower sows the word. The ones along the path are those who have the word sown in their hearts, but when they hear, Satan comes at once and by force takes away the message which is sown in them." You know, along the path of life, each one of us, at different times, God has sown seeds in our heart. As a young child, maybe, as you would sing, "Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so." Those little seeds, all the little Bible stories you heard in Sunday school, you listened to them, and there was the Word. There were truths that were sown in your heart. And you started to believe some of those truths. I wish that I still had the faith I had when I was a little boy. I wish I still believed like I did then. I'm trusting for God to return me to that kind of experience I had with God, because I would just pray because of the things I was taught. I would just pray, and I believed it was going to happen. I prayed one time for a toolbox. My mom wouldn't let me buy it. She said, "You just need to pray for it." And I prayed, and I believed God was going to give it to me. My birthday came. She told me, she says, "Maybe it's your birthday, you'll get it." My birthday came, and I was expecting to get my toolbox because I'd been praying, and I believed I would. We had a party, and different ones brought gifts, and I saw the first box. It was the one my mom got me. I opened it up real quick because I knew that was my toy, my toolbox. Well, I opened it up and it wasn't. Well, the air was let out of me. And I thought, no, I prayed about that. God's gonna give me that toolbox. I just know He is. I opened the next present, it wasn't. The next present, it wasn't. The next present, it wasn't. All the way through it until all the presents were opened. And I mean, I was disappointed. And I thought, no, I know God's going to let me have that. And there was a knock on the door. And my next door neighbor, who at that time was a 16-year-old girl, and I was probably about 5 or 6, was a 16-year-old girl, and she was my girlfriend. I mean, she was my girlfriend, and she claimed me. And so she come over, and she had a present, and she gave it to me, and I'd forgot all about the toolbox now because my girlfriend had brought me a present. I thought, wow, she really likes me, you know. And I started opening it, and when I opened it, guess what it was? The toolbox. The toolbox. You see, that kind of faith, you just believe. You just know. And those things are implanted in our heart, but sometimes along the way, what happens is the devil comes and he steals those truths. He steals those his word that has been implanted within us. He steals them from our heart. This morning, I want to talk about some of those birds that steal the seeds from our heart, the seeds of the Word. The first bird that I want to talk about is the bluebird. We have a bluebird, a picture up here, I hope. Does anyone know what a bluebird looks like? I know some of you do. They're probably laying on your backyard on the ground for some of you. But that's a bluebird. That's a bluebird. Has a beautiful color. Put it back up there if you would. But I want you to check out this dude's eyes. He looks pretty sad, doesn't he? He looks like maybe, oh, it's me. He's not real happy. Well, what I'm talking about here is the blues. The blues we have in life sometimes. When we're down and when we're low and when we're in a dark place and when things are on us and we're weighing on it. A place where we want to know where the Lord is. Where are you, God? Where are you? What are you doing? I don't understand. Why are you against me even? There's times in the Bible, there's been men of God crying, God, why are you against me? Why are you against me? How could you let this happen to me? What's going on here? I thought you loved me. Help me. Why aren't you helping me? My life is miserable. Where are you, God? This is what we're talking about. Where you get in such a place where you start questioning and you start lamenting over certain things. You know, the psalmist David, he endured a lot of hardships. And he went through things and he lamented a whole lot. He got the blues, so to say. In Psalms 22:6, he says, I'm no longer a human being. I'm a worm, despised and scorned by everyone. This was probably when he was out running, when he was out fleeing from Saul and he was all alone. And he was hiding here and hiding there, didn't know where to go, didn't feel like he had many friends except Jonathan. And Jonathan was in a place where he couldn't help him a whole lot. And you know, even the prophet Jeremiah, a prophet, this guy got in places too. He went through dark, deep places. You know, sometimes we go through those dark places and we go through those low places in our life. And we struggle with them, but a lot of times in those places is where God teaches us things that we could not learn anywhere else. It's where we really pay attention and we really listen to God. It's really where we have to stretch our faith. Jeremiah 27 through 18. I'm not going to read all those scriptures, but what I've done is I've just sort of rephrased them in my own words. Jeremiah here, he says, God, you've conned me. You've made me into the laughingstock. Your word is a cause of ridicule to me, scorn, contempt, rejection. I'd love to stop talking about you, but unfortunately I can't. Cursed be the day I was born. It would have been better if I would have died in the womb of my mother, murdered, than to live this life. Man, that's a pretty bad place, isn't it? And this is Jeremiah. And again in Jeremiah 15, starting with verse 15, again I'm going to summarize. He says, God, I did everything you asked me to, but it now appears to be as if you've just given me unceasing pain. Refused to take it away and proven yourself to be deceitful. Wow. Maybe we have never been that bold to talk to God that way or say things like that. But in our hearts, we felt that way. And we felt the blues. We felt this oppression. We felt things coming in on us. And maybe we've said, when I was a young boy, I used to like to listen to, I can't ever remember, Paul Robeson. Anyone know who Paul Robeson was? He was an Afro-American man. He had this real deep voice like this. And when he would sing, it just resonated. And he would sing this song, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. And then he'd sing, sometimes I'm up, been there? And then it says, sometimes I'm down. Up and down, up and down. Sometimes I'm almost to the ground, it says. Although you see me going long so, I have my trials here below. If you get there before I do, tell all my friends I'm a-coming to heaven too. Know what I'm talking about? This song, you can tell, I don't know who wrote this, but whoever wrote this had been in that place, had been in that low place, and they were expressing their feelings. You know what he's talking about? It's things in our everyday life that face us. And things over and over. You ever get tired of the same thing? You ever get tired of fighting the same battle? Over and over and over. Never-ending problems in the family. Worried. Sick about the kids. Don't know where they're doing. Don't know what they're doing. Don't know if they're in trouble. Don't know if they're going to, even in school, and bills past due. Arguments with our spouses, with each other over just little stuff that won't matter. It doesn't matter at all. But it seems like they just, you know what? That's something. Tired. Run down. You have iron poor blood, maybe. Need Geritol. Some of you older ones will know what that's about. Your nervous system's shot. You're stressed out. No time to do all the things we want to do. You're just trapped in this life of just existence. Problems on every side. No one cares. You wonder what's happening. You look back and you see that life has just passed you by in so many ways. You wonder. Life's in a spin. All these things are piling up, and you're just about ready to throw in the towel. You ever felt that way? Maybe a few of those. And to top it off, you find yourself consistently sad. That sad feeling. And cranky. And you feel irritable. And you feel upset. You withdraw from people. You pull back. You prefer solitude. You don't feel strongly about anything at all. You just soon everybody just leave you alone. You experience feelings of failure, anxiety, and hopelessness. You want to know what it is? You want me to tell you what it is? It's the birds. It's the bluebirds. It's the birds that the devil sends down to eat up those seeds in your heart that we were talking about. This old bluebird, he hovers over us and he tries to steal God's promises out of our heart. He does. See, God has promises in His Word, promises to us. And the enemy will try to steal that out. He'll send that old bluebird down, and just like we read through some of it, exactly what we're talking about here. So bluebird, he knows. He knows that the joy of the Lord is your strength. And so what he'll do, he'll try to come down and steal that joy. Nehemiah 8:10, the New Living Testament said, this is a sacred day before our Lord. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. This is a day. This day right here. You know what? Yesterday was too, and the day before that is a sacred day in the eyes of the Lord. Every day you suck in air. Every day your heart beats is sacred. Ought to be sacred to us. It should be. That is a blessing that sometimes we don't recognize or continue to recognize and we forget about. But it says, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. But it says in Nehemiah 8:10, it says, this is a sacred day before our Lord. Don't be dejected and sad, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. Well, sure, those birds will try to steal that joy from you. The old devil knows if he can get certain things, get us in a certain state of mind or frame of thinking or a certain spirit type thing on us, we'll never receive that word. We'll never accept that word. We'll never remember that word. It won't come back to us. What he tries to do is he tries to give us another word. It's called discouragement. He tries to give us a word, discouragement. Heard a little story. A group of frogs were hopping along one day, and they were on the way to the pond to play a game of cards. And they're hopping along on a wall out by the barnyard, just hopping along. There's about 3 or 4 of them, 5 of them, something like that. And the farmer had been milking his cow and happened to have a bucket set there that he had just got through milking his cow. And 2 of these frogs fell in the bucket. And they're splashing around, they're flopping around and everything, and all of a sudden, it's like they're about to drown. And these old card-playing buddies, they hollered out to him, and they started screaming at him. And
Well, you might as well just give up. You'll never get out.
Who said that? Might as well just give up. Who said that?
There's no hope.
You ever hear any of them say that?
You're a goner.
You ever hear those words come at you like that? Yeah, sure. Well, they kept jumping and trying and flopping around. Finally, one of them drowned. He went down. And he said, they splashed around and they started hollering at him again after the other one drowned. And
You're not going to make it. Look at what happened to Oscar. You're next.
You ever hear those voices come at you? But you know what the old frog did? He kept jumping. And he kept jumping until the milk sort of turned to cream, and that cream started rising to the top, and he stepped off that cream out of the milk onto dry land. You know, there's a moral to that story. First of all, don't listen to the voices. Don't listen to all those voices, all the ones that's hollering, all the ones that's shouting discouragement to you, all the things that's being said. Don't listen to those voices. Just keep on hopping. Just keep on doing what you know to do. Keep on doing what you've been made to do. Just keep on. And you know what's going to happen? After a while, the cream is going to rise to the top. And you're going to step out of all the circumstances you're in. And you can go on and play cards with a buddy. Don't listen to those voices. Charles Spurgeon, a great man of God of yesteryears, powerful preacher. I've heard him and read some of his books. I've heard a little bit on a tape one time that was recorded, but I've read several of his books and sermons and powerful sermons. He says, before any great achievement, anytime you're doing anything, before any great achievement that he would have, he said, depression usually would come upon me. Now that doesn't make sense, or does it? Does it? Did you ever think that maybe the reason you're feeling the way you are, forsaken and all alone, is because the enemy knows that there's a victory ahead for you? He sees better where you're headed than we do. He knows what God is getting ready to do. He knows what's getting ready to happen. And He's wanting to bring this discouragement on you so that you won't follow through, so that you won't keep on jumping. That's exactly what it is. He don't want you to keep on jumping. Anyone ever eat cream? My grandma, she used to do cream, and that cream would come to the top, and she'd scoop it off and put some sugar in it, and she'd put it on some bread. Was it good? Put what? Oh, really? You know what? In Joshua 1:5, it says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. See, He wants to steal that from you when you're down in that bucket and when you're having to jump. I will never leave you. So you didn't hear that voice. All these other voices were overriding the other voice that was probably saying that, God's voice, that still small voice. You know, in studies, they have found out that light, being deprived of light, causes depression. Being deprived of light. Darkness causes depression. It's called SAD, S-A-D. But they found out that sitting in front of a light, a bright light, for a short period of time each day, like in Alaska, I think there's days on end that it's dark there. If people get in depression, they'll tell them to sit in front of light for a period of time. It helps some of those who suffer from SAD. It helps them to not have the blues. You want to know why you may have the blues? You need more light. You need more light. You need the light that the Word has for you. You need the light that prayer, the revealing, that light that comes from prayer, the light of God, the Spirit of God. You need that. You need the light. Just some encouraging words here to think about. On a foggy day, a sailor still believes in days when the skies are clear. He knows it's foggy, but he knows there's some clear skies ahead. And there's more clear skies than there are foggy skies. You know, if we could just understand that, that would help us. Another one is all the water in the ocean can't sink a ship unless the water gets inside the ship. There's some of us out there, we in such a place, we're putting water in. We're putting it in. Oh, I've got a leak. I'm going under. No, we need to be doing this way. This way. We're throwing it on with our thoughts and with our attitudes. We're putting more water in the boat. Our pastor in North Carolina had a little quote, and it's about birds. And he said, you can't keep a bird from pooping on your head, but you can keep him from building a nest in your hair. In other words, he may come by and he may nail you, but you don't have to. You can scare him off. You can scare him off. And let me tell you something. You can keep him from pooping on your head too. You can. I shared that several years ago over the other building, that very saying right there. And that night, Scott Lamb and Rebecca brought me this cap. This is all you need. See, it's got a target on the top. It's got little bitty white places, But that's all you need. You know what? What are we talking about? You see, this could be called our helmet of salvation. When the enemy attacks. You see, as long as you keep your helmet of salvation on, there's nothing that can touch you. There's nothing that can touch you as long as you have your helmet of salvation. Another bird that steals seed from our heart is the yellow-bellied sapsucker. The yellow-bellied sapsucker. Now his belly isn't real yellow, but that front of that, if you've ever seen one, it's real yellow, very yellow. Yellow-bellied sapsucker is a type of woodpecker that has a yellow stomach. And what it does, it creates holes in trees. And it causes the sap to run out. And if it gets enough holes in it, the sap running out, it weakens the trees. And also, there's insects that come in and get in that sap and eat that sap and get in the tree and eventually kill the tree. So what it does, it weakens it. It saps it. S-A-P. That word sap means to weaken or destroy gradually without being aware of. There are sap suckers in our life that we're not aware of, that saps us of our spiritual strength, that draws it out, that allows spiritual insects to get into the very heart of our being and destroy us. Emotional, depleting vampires that sap our spiritual strength. You see, our eyes, our ears, are the gateway to our soul. Our eyes and our ears are the gateway to our soul. What we watch, what we see, what we associate with constantly feeds us. Have you ever heard you are what you eat? If you eat a hamburger all the time, you look like a hamburger. If you eat things that are unwholesome, you'll not be healthy. The same way, if we're not watching, or if we are watching and listening to things that are unwholesome, listening to things that drag us down, hang around people that are critical, people that cheat, people that steal, people that gossip, people that have bitter hearts, people that are angry, people that have a chip on their shoulder. Because you are feeding your inner man with junk food, you're not going to be able to be as strong as God wants you or created you to be. You have to be extremely careful as to what you take in. What if we were as cautious of what we spiritually take in as we are when we have a diet and we're cautious of what we eat? What if we had that kind of a diet, that we were careful about what came into our heart? You know, there's over 500 channels, that's a rough estimate, probably a bunch more, on the television. We have internet. We have smartphones. And you can take your phone out and you can find anything and look for anything and see anything on there you want to. Magazines. Walk through the counter beside the grocery store. There's magazines stacked there with all kinds of garbage on them. And we get excited when we read that garbage, that most of them are lies, most of them are gossip, most of them are things that are running people down and hurting people and saying things about people that aren't true or could be true that really don't need to be out there because it could destroy lives and families. And we read those and we look at those. Those things influence us. Things showing backstabbing and conflict and jealousy and things that are dysfunctional. What we thought was these, and we don't realize is these things like that have a tendency just to become normal to us. We walk by the store and it's a magazine. And it's just normal. And we read it. Everybody else reads it. It's right there. And we'll read a little bit. And then we'll get interested in it. We'll start looking, oh, well, that's, and well, I'll buy that. I'll just read that one. And just a little bit. Just a little bit. When the whole times we're filling our mind with trash. Things on the TV, same way. Things in magazines. Things, even our billboards. There's things on our billboards that they would never put in magazines, used to not. There's things that they wouldn't put on TV. There's words used that weren't allowed said on TV. There's people that are dressed or not dressed on these that never would have been allowed on TV. But see how little by little by little, if you put trash in, what are you going to get out? Trash. If you watch programs where people are constantly compromising, if you know what I mean, I'm trying to use words here to help us out, compromising in their life with their physical being, being unfaithful in relationships. Don't be surprised if you yourself might get in situations like that, because you see our world is so saturated with it now. There's certain things now that they try to pass laws to accept certain things that used to be against the law. What is happening here, what's going on, is we're being desensitized. It's all these things that we take in. They desensitize us. A few years ago, a young man walked out into a high school and killed 3 of his classmates. He was studied. They brought him in, studied him. There was nothing in his history that was of any violence. He was raised in a middle-class family that was good. They had went to church and stuff. And they asked him why he would do something like that, why he would kill someone so easy. Well, his answer wasn't any really any big deal to him. He just said, I do it every day. What was he talking about? Video games. Does it every day, kills people. Just shoots them. Serial killer. Well, here's what happens is he watched it so long that the line between make-believe and reality became a blur. And he couldn't discern reality from make-believe. Serial killer Ted Bundy was interviewed by James Dobson before he was put to death. He was electrocuted. He had killed, I think he was sent to court and was found guilty to be executed. And there were over 30 people that they were aware of and that they were able to bring before, convict him of. But there were many more. I want to just, he tortured them. 12 of those 30 people, he actually cut their head off. I want to read to you what he told Dobson. He told him that it all started with pornography that he found under the mattress. And I believe it was his uncle's. I'm not sure about who it was, but one of his family. Pornography. Just pornography. Just pornography that was found in the home. I want to read to you what he actually said. It says, it happened in stages, gradually, he said. My experience with pornography that deals on a violent level with sexuality is once you become addicted to it, it would keep looking for more potent, more explicit, more graphic kinds of material until you reach a point where the pornography only goes so far. Then that's when he started doing other things, like torturing, like taking lives. Ephesians 4:27 says, and do not give the devil a foothold. Do not give the devil a foothold. We get right up. It's almost like we get right up. When Michael was real little, Suzanne would make like cookies, and she'd put them on the table, and she'd cover them with plastic, and you'd see him in there, and he'd go in there, and he'd walk underneath, and he'd pull that plastic up, and he'd look at it, and he'd get over there like, and he knew he wasn't supposed to do it. He knew he wasn't going to do it, and he would turn around and look at me. And then he'd go back because he knew what was going to come. That's why it's like we want to get just as close as we can. If we could just touch it, if we could just smell it, if we could just taste it, that's all. That's it. That's like a mousetrap. A cheese. You put cheese in a mousetrap, it works good. That mouse smells that cheese, wham! He's gone. And that's the way the enemy is. The only way the devil can come in is if we open the door. The front door and the back door to our hearts are our eyes and our ears. Proverbs 15:14 says, a wise person is hungry for knowledge, while the fool feeds on trash. There are things that sap our spiritual strength, and we are unaware of it. Our eyes and ears see these things. Negative influence. Psalms 1:1 in the Amplified said, blessed or happy, fortunate, prosperous, enviable is the man who walks and lives not in the counsel of the ungodly, following their advice, their plans and purposes, nor stands submissive and inactive in the path where sinners walk, nor sits down to relax and rest where the scornful and the mockers gather. In other words, I'm going to put this in just plain old English. If you're going to soar like an eagle, you can't run around with chickens. If you're going to soar with an eagle, you can't run around with chickens. What's going to happen is you're going to become what they are. You're going to do what they do. And you're never going to know what the ability you have and what God has for you because you've consented to live down here where chickens do. And I like chickens. But I sure wouldn't want to be one. I wouldn't. The TV, things we watch, things we read, things we listen to. Our mind's a computer. Everything that you see, things you heard, is computed in here somewhere. They've said they've gone in there and just touched the brain. And at times a memory would come back by just being touched in a certain place. Habits, things that control you. Things you know are ungodly. Those things are implanted in our mind. Not just our mind, but in our heart. Hobbies that possess us. See, sometimes there's even good things that we need to be careful about. Hobbies that possess us. Places we go, things we do. The places you go, can you take Jesus along? Would you invite Him along to go with you? To do what you do? Is there any place you go that you wouldn't take Him? Good, wholesome things can sap you. Also, the third bird. And ladies, you don't have to listen to this if you don't want to, okay? This is for the men. This is just the men. The ladies saying, okay, let's go. Okay. The third bird is the little chickadees. The little chickadees. There's a little, isn't that cute? Isn't that a cute bird? Oh my goodness. Little petite thing. Isn't that sweet? But you know, it was a little chickadee that got David in trouble. A little chickadee. For 2 Samuel 11, 1 and 2, it says, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israel army. They destroyed the Amorites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. For the roof, he saw a chickadee bathing. The chickadee was very beautiful. And David sent someone, now I'm adding those words, I want you to know, just in case you didn't know. And David sent someone to find out about her, and he said, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Elam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent messengers to get the chickadee. She came to him, and he slept with her. First of all, one thing that I want to point out, men, is this. David wasn't where he was supposed to be. David wasn't where. It was a time when he should have been with his army, but he got off the battlefield. He put his guard down. There are times that we are not where we're supposed to be. And things, okay, there's a lot of things that could be said right there. The second thing is, if you don't stick your hand in a beehive, you won't get stung. That's like that cookie. That's like that cookie. Man, there's a little chickadee that'll come along at just the right time. Just the right time. And you have your guard down. Suzanne is sick today. It's just something that God would allow that. I'll tell you a story. I was going to tell it anyway. Because after it happened, I went to her and told her. Not long after Suzanne and I had gotten married, I went to work at Kroger one afternoon. I mean, not long at all. And do you remember your first little, argument? Well, that was probably our first argument. It was over some, I don't even remember what it was. But we argued. We got upset with each other. And both of us just sort of, when I went to work and she was where she was at, we just went our own ways. I'm checking groceries out. Been there a while. And in this register in the line was this pretty young lady standing there. And she was waiting to be checked out. And I mean literally checked out. And how did I know that? Because of what she didn't have on. And how when she took her groceries out of the cart, a lot of things were revealed. And when she stood up, I tried to do other things. She stood up, and I turned around, and I said, "Hello, how are you today?" Her reply was this. She sort of leaned over. She said, "Without." Me, in my great wisdom, didn't get it. I said, "Well, I trust the Lord to bless you, and you'll have a great day." And I put the groceries in her bag, and this guy beside me, he said, "Do you know what she said?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Without." He said, "She meant without." And when he said it, I understood. Without. You see, men, when you're in the right place, when you're vulnerable, when things are, there'll be this little chickadee that'll come along and will whisper in your ear, without. Without. And you know what? David entertained that little chickadee, and it changed the rest of his life. It never was the same again. Great heartache. Great opposition. The fourth bird. Ladies, men, now you can go to sleep. Ladies, wake up. The fourth bird is a catbird. You see, it was a catbird that got Bathsheba in trouble. Yeah. You heard somebody say, "Man, he's a catbird." You've heard that. Girls, don't shake your head. I know you have. Catbird. This catbird, you know, the ones that have these sharp features. Look at that bird. He looks tough, doesn't he? He looks like he's flexing his muscles. He looks, dark complected. He got a good suntan, He's got those big brown eyes, and he's got that suave look, and his voice is just, David, 1 Samuel 16:12, when he was at Jesse, his father's house, and Samuel came to find a king. I'll read what it says. It says, Jesse sent and brought him. Speaking of David, David had a healthy reddish complexion and beautiful eyes and was fine looking. I've heard, Suzanne had this lady that worked for her in this place, and that word, we'd go to lunch and stuff. Said, "Boy, that's a fine looking man. That's just a fine looking man." Well, see, that's what we're talking about. He was fine looking. In other words, he was a catbird. He was a catbird. It's something how a catbird seems to always pop up at the right time too. Uriah, her husband, maybe hardly ever home. Job more important. Remember, he's the one that didn't even want it. He stayed right there. He didn't want to be away from everybody else. He wanted to be in the battle for the king. When he did come, he was always tired maybe. Grumpy. Grouchy, irritable. Didn't give her any attention like she needed. Never had time for the kids. Always bringing his work home. Doesn't do anything around the house. Never says anything encouraging. Never gives me any or makes any of those mushy moves toward me. No, never takes me out to a candlelight dinner. Doesn't take care of himself. Kind of getting a paunch even. Then all of a sudden comes along this catbird that pays attention to her. Says all the right things. Does all the right things. And man, he's good looking and he's even younger. And on top of that, he's rich, a king. You see, ladies and gentlemen, There's a slimy devil who wants to steal the word from you that says, "But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart." And in 1 Thessalonians it says, "Abstain from all appearances of evil." He doesn't want you. He wants to steal that from you. He doesn't want you to remember the results. He doesn't want you to know what the results is going to be. He doesn't want you to know how it's going to affect you in the future. He steals that truth from you. The fifth, let me give you one final one. The fifth, I believe that's the final one. The fifth one is a mockingbird. A mockingbird. You see, a mockingbird, songs, a lot of his songs are not really his songs. He is an imitator. He can imitate a blue jay. He can imitate other calls of other birds. In other words, he's fake. He's counterfeit. He's not real. That's what the enemy, that's what the mockingbird, this one that's, he doesn't want to give, he doesn't want us to have. He wants to steal that truth from us. What are some of the counterfeit things that he tries to give us? Sex, the counterfeit for love. Does it every day. The city's probably full of it. Sex and counterfeit for love. There's people throughout this world. God intended for us to be pure when you're married. I wonder what that percentage is today. To be pure. But that doesn't happen. I do believe God can make us that way again through salvation. You see, sex is over in a while, but love never ends. Sex, it's over in just a little while, but love never ends. 1 Corinthians 13 chapter, it says that. It never ends. Never ends. Happiness for counterfeit joy. Money for counterfeit fulfillment. Drugs and alcohol for counterfeit peace. Take this. People get in a place and they drink and they do drugs because it erases everything that's around us, and they live in this unreal world for a period of time. But then when it comes back, they're in worse shape and it mounts up the opposite direction. For peace. Counterfeit for peace. See, God, there's a high that you can get. I want to tell you something. There's a high that you can get that's not like anything you've ever experienced, to know that you have peace in your heart, or to have peace in your heart because you know if you was to die right now, you'd go to heaven because you and God, things are squared off and you've got things right. And you don't have any check marks by your name. You don't have anything written down. But the slate has been erased totally clean. Worldly pleasure are often even counterfeit for your purpose or calling in life. It'll just give you worldly pleasure, and you follow worldly pleasure, and you never really find your purpose or your calling. Religion, the counterfeit for holiness or godliness. 2 Timothy 3, 1-5 says, but mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous. Whoa, sounds like today, doesn't it? Without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying the power. In other words, saying they got it, but they don't have it. In 1887, a small neighborhood grocery store had a middle-aged man come in and gave the clerk a $20 bill to buy some turnips. The clerk reached in and took the turnips and took the $20 bill and put the turnips in the bag. And when she came back and put the $20 bill in her till, she looked at her hand and there was an imprint of the $20 bill on her hand. She called the authorities. The authorities ended up catching him. He was a guy who was an artist. And he lived in that area, I think. But he was a master artist. And he had taken a brush and worked for hours painting a $20 bill. And it looked so real that it was accepted, except for it was painted with watercolors. If it hadn't been wet, he could have probably got by with it. What's so interesting about the whole story? He was arrested. Later, the police found 3 portraits that he had painted that he could have sold for $16,000. What's the irony of the whole thing is that it took him about the same amount of time to do the $20 bill as it did the 3 paintings. $16,000 and a $20 bill. You see, the devil really wants us to think we are getting something when really at our disposal is all God has to offer us. Everything that we need. You see, you don't want to be content with a counterfeit. Be sure what you have is real. You have to know. You see, he wants you to know the real thing. There was a little young Chinese boy who wanted to learn and study about jade. You know what jade is? An emerald-like thing, a stone. About jade. And he went to this man who was very well known in that area and was a teacher. And he came in and he handed this young boy, he took a jade and handed it and said, put it in your hand and grip it and hold it. And he held it in his hand. And as he held it in his hand, he started talking philosophy. He started talking about this man and this woman and started talking about this and started talking about that. At the end of the day, he says, okay, let me have the jade. He says, you can go. The boy come back the next day. He handed him the jade. He put it in his hand. Here we go again. He starts talking about things in the world and about this and about that and about this. But he never says anything about that jade. And that went on for a week. It went on for 2 weeks. And finally he got in a place, the boy got in a place, and he thought, I'm going to ask him, but because of what he felt with this older gentleman, he didn't do that. And so finally, he come in one day and he handed him a rock, and he handed it to him, put it in his hand. As soon as he put it in his hand, the boy says, that's not a jade. He knew by just holding it in his hand the real thing, because he had experienced it. He knew what it felt like. He knew the feel. He knew what it looked like. You know, that's why it's so important that we are around the real thing all the time. That's important why you need to be around what's real. Is because you need to know, your children need to be around it. Around people that really live in what this word says. Be around the real thing, because there'll come a time in their life, and there'll come a time in your life when you'll be like that young boy was. That's not real. That's counterfeit. And if you're around it enough, you'll know. Because that'll get inside you. And sometimes you don't even know it. That young boy didn't even know what he was learning. But he was being taught by this wise old man. This morning, I've shared with you a few birds that will try to steal God's word out of your heart. They'll try to steal God's promises. Try to steal your salvation. Your very soul. Try to steal the light so you'll stumble. Psalms 119, 105 says, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. He'll try to steal that. He'll try to steal the truth, these birds will try to steal eternity from you. These are just a few birds that I've pointed out to you. You need to start being a bird watcher. You need to start being a bird watcher. And you need to make yourself aware of different things in your life that are trying to steal and pull the Word, the truth of God, His promises out of your heart, because they're so underlying sometimes that we don't even realize it. Just the TV alone. What have we learned from that? What have we got to a place in our life, even as Christians, that we accept as right? It used to be on TV that I think Dick Van Dyke, did you ever notice when they went to bed? They never were in the same bed. They wouldn't even do that. Today, that's not even an option, is it? It's just sort of, everybody just accepts it. Our kids, when we would watch TV, you know what we'd do? Commercial, come on, if it was something, click, we'd change the channel. Wait till the commercial go back to what we was watching. We'd do that. You know, we did that so much. One day I was sitting there, and we were sitting downstairs, and Matthew had the control thing, which was sort of unusual at the time. And we were watching, and something came on, and he knew that wasn't right. Click, he turned. You see, even our kids have got to see, they have to know, we can't accept certain things. We can't be drawn in. We can't be sucked in. This morning, let's stand. This morning, if you have felt birds or seen some birds flapping over your head, trying to steal the seeds of God's Word, truth, trying to steal His promises from you, and you feel the need to come pray, we invite you to do that.